What happens when a CEO walks into one of his own restaurants in disguise, only to watch a manager kick out a single mom in front of her daughter? Victor Kessler leaned against the steering wheel of his rental car, parked across the street from location number 7 of his buffet chain. The neon sign above the doors buzzed faintly even in the daylight. 11 stores now. He'd bought the company 5 years ago when it was struggling, rebranded it, cleaned it up. Or he thought he had. Lately, things felt off. Customer satisfaction at this location had dropped. Online reviews mentioned rude staff and inconsistent food. The district manager, Terry, had brushed it off, blamed entitled customers and a few bad apples. But Victor didn't build his company on excuses. He hadn't met most of the frontline staff here. His disguise was simple but solid: dyed hair, glasses, a bit of padding around the middle, and a name tag that read James New Hire. Since corporate handled onboarding at a separate training center, it wasn't unusual for staff at individual stores to never meet the owner in person. Victor stepped out of the car and walked through the buffet's front doors, blending in with the lunch crowd. The air smelled of fried chicken and mashed potatoes. Tables clattered with plates, forks scraped on trays. It felt busy, but something about the energy was off, too quiet among staff. Too tense. New guy, a voice asked. Victor turned. A young man with tired eyes and a stained apron extended a hand. I'm Bryce, I'll show you around. Don't expect much help from management today. They're in one of their moods. Victor nodded. Thanks. I'll follow your lead. Bryce led him behind the counter, explaining the basics fast. You refill the trays, keep the area clean, and don't argue with the manager. That's it. Victor noticed Bryce's limp. You all right? Yeah, Bryce said quickly. Just a long shift, third double this week. We're short-staffed since Mandy quit. Said she couldn't take the yelling anymore. Victor raised an eyebrow. Yelling? Bryce just sighed and motioned toward the back office. You'll see. By noon, the line at the buffet stretched out the door. Bryce moved like clockwork, even with his limp. Victor tried to keep up. He saw a few things that bothered him, like how the assistant manager barked at a high school worker for dropping a spoon, or how no one helped when a tray spilled near the drink station. But what happened next made everything freeze. A woman in a faded jacket stood in line with her little girl, maybe 6 years old. The girl clutched a plastic coin purse and kept glancing at the food with wide eyes. When they reached the front, the woman spoke softly to the cashier. Hi, I know it's a buffet, but my daughter can't eat much. She's got allergies. I was wondering if we could just pay for one plate and share. Before the cashier could answer, the manager stepped in. Victor hadn't met this man before, but his name tag read Manager Dean. Not happening, Dean snapped. You pay for 2 meals or you leave. The woman looked startled. Sir, I'm not trying to cheat anyone. It's just she barely eats, and this is all I have. Dean crossed his arms. This isn't a charity. You pay or you're done. The little girl tugged her mom's sleeve. Mommy, it's okay. Victor watched the whole thing from behind the counter. Bryce leaned in and muttered, this happens a lot. He doesn't care who he embarrasses. Victor's jaw clenched. The woman pulled her daughter close. We'll go, she said quietly. They turned to leave. Victor couldn't stay silent. Wait, he said, stepping out from behind the counter. I'll pay for them. Dean turned. Who are you? Just a new hire, Victor said, keeping his voice even. But that was wrong, man. She wasn't trying to steal. Dean rolled his eyes. You don't make the rules, new guy, and if you want to keep this job, stay out of it. Victor looked at the woman, then at her daughter. Please stay, I've got it. The woman hesitated. She looked exhausted. Are you sure? Victor nodded. Absolutely. Dean stepped forward. You're out of line, come with me. Victor followed him to the back office. Inside, Dean shut the door and crossed his arms. You don't get to question my decisions in front of customers. Victor stared at him. You threw out a mother and her kid for trying to share a meal. That's not leadership, Dean scoffed. I enforce policy. If you can't handle that, maybe you're not cut out for this place. Victor held his tongue. Not yet. Back out front, Bryce quietly handed the woman 2 trays. It's on the house, he said. Really? She looked like she might cry. Thank you, I didn't expect anyone to stand up for us. Victor watched from the corner. His chest felt heavy. This place had lost its way. Later, when the lunch rush slowed, he slipped into the cooler to catch his breath. He leaned against the wall, heart pounding. He'd seen enough. Tomorrow he would come back not as James the new hire, but as Victor Kessler, the man who owned every square foot of this place. Victor arrived just after sunrise, this time in a navy blazer and crisp white shirt. No name tag. No disguise. He parked in the same spot as the day before, but the weight in his chest felt heavier. Watching that mother leave with her daughter, humiliated in front of a crowd, had cracked something open in him. It wasn't just bad management, it was the kind of rot that spreads quietly until a company forgets what it stands for. By the time he stepped through the side entrance, the kitchen lights were on, and the prep team had begun chopping onions and sorting through yesterday's leftover trays. No one recognized him at first, not until the assistant manager, a woman in her mid-30s with a clipboard and a Bluetooth headset, looked up from an inventory sheet. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone cautious. Victor nodded once. "I'm looking for Dean." "Tell him Victor Kessler's here." Her eyes widened. She lowered the clipboard slowly. Right away, she disappeared into the back office. A few seconds later, Dean emerged, his expression blank at first until recognition set in. Victor didn't wait for a greeting. "Office." Now, Dean hesitated, then turned and walked ahead without a word. Victor followed, closing the door behind them. The room smelled like old coffee and printer ink. A small whiteboard listed weekly goals, none of which had anything to do with people. "I gave you autonomy here, Dean," Victor began, voice low and even. "But I watched you throw a child and her mother out of this place yesterday like they were trash. You didn't ask questions. You didn't listen. You humiliated them." Dean sat down, arms crossed. "The rules are clear. One plate, one person. If we start making exceptions, this isn't about plates," Victor snapped. "It's about dignity." Dean opened his mouth, but Victor cut him off. "You're done here. Clear out your things." Dean stood up, stunned. "You're firing me over one incident." Victor stepped forward. "No, I'm firing you because I watched how you treat people when you think no one important is watching." Dean went silent. For once, there was nothing to argue. Victor stepped out of the office and addressed the assistant manager still standing nearby. "What's your name?" "Lena," she said, straightening up. "You're acting manager for now, but I want a full assessment of why this location is bleeding customers and staff. Numbers, schedules, incident logs, and I want to know which employees have been picking up the slack." Lena hesitated. "There's a lot." "Then start with the names of the people who have stayed loyal." She nodded, already flipping through her clipboard. Victor made his way to the front line where the morning staff was just beginning prep. Bryce was there, tightening a lid on a soup container. When he looked up and saw Victor, he paused, confused. "Wait, you're Victor," he said. "I own the company." Bryce's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. "I owe you an apology," Victor said. "You tried to do the right thing yesterday. You stepped in when no one else would." That didn't go unnoticed. Bryce seemed unsure how to respond. He wiped his hands on a towel. "I didn't think anyone cared." "I didn't either," Victor replied. "But I'm here to change that." He motioned toward the dining area. "Walk with me." They moved through the empty space, the morning sun casting long shadows across the booths. "How many hours have you been working lately?" Victor asked. "Usually around 60, Bryce said. "Sometimes more. We're down 2 line workers and a dishwasher. They quit last month. And no replacements." Dean said they'd figure it out, which meant I'd stay late. Victor nodded once, then stopped walking. "You still want to be here?" Bryce looked around, then back at him. "I want this place to be better. I've worked here since I was 17. "I know it can be." Victor extended a hand. "You just earned a promotion, effective immediately. Supervisor training starts next week. And you're down to 45 hours max. We'll bring in proper coverage." Bryce shook his hand, still stunned. "Thank you." Victor turned back toward the kitchen, where Lena was now speaking with 2 younger workers, both wearing the kind of distant expressions he recognized too well. He approached slowly. "Morning," he offered. "How's everyone holding up?" The taller of the 2, a girl with a loose braid and a name tag that read Sasha, shrugged. "It's a job," she said. "We do what we can." "And when things go wrong," Sasha exchanged a glance with the other, a young man named Illy. Neither answered. Victor folded his arms. "Be honest." Illy looked down, then spoke quietly. "Sometimes if we drop something or ask for help, we get yelled at. We stopped saying anything." Victor looked at Lena. How long has that been happening? Lena tapped her pen against the clipboard. I only took this position 2 weeks ago, but I've been on staff 6 years. Dean didn't like questions. He'd rather replace someone than train them. Not anymore, Victor said. From now on, if someone raises a concern, they're heard, no exceptions. He turned back to Sasha and Ellie. I want recommendations. People you think are doing more than they should. People who are holding this place together. They both went quiet for a moment before Sasha said, Reggie from Dish. He's been covering double shifts since the other guy left. And Carla, Illy added. She comes in early to prep even though she's not paid for it. Victor nodded. Tell them to meet me in the break room in 10 minutes. He walked there himself, pausing briefly to scan the faded employee bulletin board. Most of the notices were outdated, some curling at the corners. Nothing about employee recognition. No photos, no birthdays, just rules. He pulled the old flyers down and tossed them into the trash. Carla arrived first, mid-40s, quiet, eyes sharp. She sat with her arms resting on the table, posture stiff. You're Victor, she asked. I am, she gave a short nod. What's this about? I heard you've been doing more than you're paid for. Carla's jaw tightened. I'm not looking for a handout, I just don't like seeing the kitchen fall apart. Victor shook his head. It's not a handout, it's recognition. Starting today, you're getting a raise, and if you're open to it, I want you training new prep staff. Her eyes softened slightly. That depends. Are we actually getting new prep staff? Yes, Victor said. You shouldn't be the safety net. Reggie showed up a few minutes later, his apron still soaked. He looked surprised to see Victor waiting. You the big boss? I am. Reggie leaned against the wall, arms folded. So what now, another speech? No speeches, Victor said. Just this, you're getting paid for every extra shift you've covered, and tomorrow someone else is washing dishes. Reggie blinked. You serious? I don't joke about pay. Reggie nodded slowly. All right then. Victor stood. I'm not fixing this place with slogans. I'm fixing it with people who care, and that means you're not invisible anymore. Outside, the lunch crowd had started forming. The front doors opened with a soft chime. A few familiar faces from the day before filtered in, including, to Victor's surprise, the woman and her daughter. They spotted him instantly. The girl pointed. Victor stepped forward. I'm glad you came back, he said. The woman stayed quiet for a beat, then said, I wasn't sure if we should. You should, Victor answered. And if you ever feel like you don't belong, you come find me. The little girl looked up. Can we eat together this time? Victor smiled. You'll eat, I'll work, but you'll have a table waiting. He turned, motioned to Bryce. Make sure they're taken care of. Bryce gave a nod and walked over, guiding them to a booth. Victor stood for a moment longer, watching the dining room fill. The energy had shifted. Not completely, but it was beginning, and this time he wouldn't take his eyes off it again. Victor sat at the corner booth with a legal pad open in front of him, his pen tapping against the table. The early afternoon lull gave him a rare window to observe the floor without the chaos of a lunch rush. He watched as Bryce coordinated the restocking of the dessert bar, careful not to overextend himself. The limp was still there, but Bryce moved with more control now, less urgency, more clarity. It wasn't a fix, just a start. Across the room, Carla was training 2 new prep hires, one fresh out of culinary school, the other a quiet woman who'd transferred from a closed location across town. Victor had insisted on hiring both despite the district manager's resistance last week. Now that Dean was gone, hiring decisions flowed through Lena, who had already proven more focused on capability than quotas. Victor's phone buzzed. He let it ring. He wasn't stepping back into corporate mode yet. Not until he finished what he started here. Lena approached the booth, carrying a thin folder and a look that said she'd been holding her breath since the morning meeting. I pulled the staff attendance logs and a stack of incident reports from the last 4 months, she said, setting the folder down. About half of them weren't filed properly. The rest were incomplete. Victor opened the folder, sloppy handwriting, vague summaries, several missing signatures. Who was responsible for filing these? He asked. Dean. Or technically, whoever he told to do it for him. Did anyone ever audit him? No, he said corporate had his back. Victor didn't respond. He scanned a few pages. One entry caught his attention, a disciplinary notice given to Reggie for insubordination. No details, no witness, no follow-up. Was this ever discussed with Reggie? I doubt it, Lena said. From what I've seen, Dean filed those whenever someone pushed back. Victor closed the folder. We're keeping hard copies now, but I want digital backups too, everything transparent. If someone's written up, I want time-stamps, signatures, and a full account. Lena nodded. Understood. As she turned to leave, Victor stopped her. What about positive reports? She looked confused. You mean compliments? Exactly. Has anyone ever formally documented when someone went above and beyond? Lena shook her head. No, that wasn't part of Dean's system. It is now, Victor said. If a line cook steps up, I want it on record. If a cashier de-escalates a tense situation, I want their name noted. We don't just track failures. She gave a brief nod, almost cautious, then walked off. Victor stood and moved toward the back of the kitchen. The hum of the walk-in cooler, the clatter of pans, the low whir of industrial fans created a rhythm that used to be familiar. He paused near the dish pit, where Reggie was scrubbing a tray with the kind of focus that masked frustration. Can I have a word? Victor asked. Reggie turned, drying his hands. Sure. Victor tilted his head toward the back hallway, and Reggie followed him into the staff break room. Victor pulled out the incident report from the folder and set it on the table. Did you ever see this? Reggie glanced at it. Dean wrote that after I told him we were out of degreaser and he said to just use water, I said it wasn't safe. That's what he called insubordination. Anyone else there? Carla. She backed me up. He wrote her up too. Victor's jaw tightened. That's not what this company stands for, Reggie shrugged. Didn't matter back then. You either kept your head down or you got hours cut. Victor folded the report in half and slid it across the table. This is voided, permanently, and I want you to sit in on the safety review next week. Your input matters. Reggie didn't say anything right away. Then simply, thanks. Victor stepped outside for a moment of air. The late afternoon sun drifted down over the lot. A delivery truck was idling by the loading dock. He noticed Sasha carrying 2 boxes by herself, one arm buckling under the weight. He walked over and reached for the top box. You shouldn't be lifting that alone. She looked startled, then stepped back. I asked Ali to help, but he's covering the fry station, said he couldn't leave it. Victor set the box down gently. We're stretched thin, I get that. But that doesn't mean we ignore safety. She looked away, then added, this place has been broken a long time. I didn't think anyone at the top ever noticed. I didn't, Victor admitted. That's on me. She gave a short nod and headed back inside. He lingered by the dock, his phone finally in hand. He dialed a number he hadn't used in months. Pamela, it's Victor. I need you to pull the full payroll data from this location. I want to see shift lengths, hourly rates, and any discrepancies in overtime approvals. Yes. All of it. He hung up and returned inside. The air felt thicker now, the scent of dinner preparations filling the space. He passed the fryer station, where Lee was quietly wiping down the counter. His eyes were red-rimmed, but he kept working. Victor stopped. You all right? Lee didn't answer right away. Then, I'm trying. Victor waited. My mom's sick, he said finally. I've been picking up shifts so I can send money home. Dean used to laugh when I asked for time off, said I wasn't reliable enough for it. Victor nodded slowly. You've got coverage next Tuesday. Take the day, and if you ever need to swap shifts, go through Lena, not the floor. Ali looked down. Thanks. Victor kept walking, past the booths now filling with the evening crowd. He noticed a woman in a security uniform sitting alone by the window, her tray untouched. Her eyes flicked toward the staff-only entrance, then back to her plate. He approached gently. Is everything all right? She looked up. Yeah, just not used to anyone asking. Victor pulled up a chair. You look like you've had a long shift. 14 hours, she said. I work overnights, was gonna grab dinner and head home. He gestured to her tray. Everything okay with the food? She hesitated. Honestly, it's cold. I didn't want to complain. Last time I did, the guy behind the counter said I could leave if I didn't like it. Victor's jaw locked, but he kept his voice calm. I'm sorry that happened. Would you be willing to point him out? She nodded toward the salad bar. That one in the red cap. Victor stood. Enjoy your meal. It's on the house tonight. Let me fix the rest. He walked straight to the line, stopping 6 feet from the man in the red cap. The employee Jason, according to his tag, was refilling the soup station. Victor waited until he had a clear moment. "Jason, can I speak with you in the back?" Jason followed him into the prep hallway, looking puzzled. Victor shut the door behind them. "I just spoke with a customer who said you told her to leave when she complained her food was cold." "True," Jason rolled his eyes. "People exaggerate." "She probably didn't like the seasoning." Victor cut him off. "She works security. Got off a 14-hour shift and came here for dinner. Cold food is a fixable issue. Dismissing her isn't." Jason shrugged. "It's not my job to babysit feelings. It is your job to treat every guest with respect." "That's non-negotiable." Jason laughed under his breath. "You're taking this way too serious, man." Victor didn't flinch. "You're done here. Clock out." Jason's face dropped. "Over one complaint." "No, over your attitude. And your assumption that I'd tolerate it." Jason stormed off, muttering under his breath. Victor returned to the floor. Bryce spotted him and approached quietly. "There's a lot to undo here." "I know," Victor said, "but it starts with holding the line." He scanned the dining area. Carla was now resetting the trays at the hot bar, her motions steady and deliberate. Lena was speaking with two new hires near the drink station, pointing out something on a laminated guide. It wasn't a turnaround yet. But it was a shift, and Victor wasn't walking away this time. Victor stepped into the office after closing time, the last of the customers having filed out 30 minutes earlier. The room was dim, lit only by the overhead fluorescents humming above. He pulled the door closed behind him and placed the staffing reports from Lena onto the desk. The new hires had shown up late but eager, and while the floor wasn't fully covered yet, the pressure on the staff had started to ease barely. Victor didn't pretend otherwise. Recovery was slow and required patience, but tonight he was here to finalize what came next. He walked out into the hallway and found Carla finishing her checklist in the prep room, the sleeves of her jacket tied around her waist. "You heading out?" he asked. She capped her pen and tucked the clipboard under her arm. "Planning to. My daughter's waiting." Victor nodded. "Quick question before you go. If I asked you to recommend one change to how this place is run, something we could implement in the next 7 days, what would it be?" Carla leaned against the counter. "Accountability. Not just for the staff, for managers. People don't quit because of the work. They quit because no one listens when things go wrong." Victor looked her directly in the eyes. "That's exactly what we're fixing, starting with revised leadership training, and you're part of that committee." She looked surprised. "Me? You've seen more than most people here. I want people on that team who have been ignored before." She gave a small nod, then grabbed her bag. "All right, I'll be in early Monday." Victor waited until she left, then returned to the office and called Lena in. She entered without hesitation, holding a folder in one hand and a mug of stale coffee in the other. "Got your end-of-week report?" he asked. She handed it over. "Staffing's still tight, but we've got 2 new hires passing orientation next week. Reggie's stepping into shift lead on nights. Bryce already started helping with scheduling, and Sasha's been training Illy on inventory." Victor flipped through the pages. "What about customer feedback?" Lena pulled a folded printout from her pocket. 3 compliments on the food, 1 complaint about wait times. "No issues with staff behavior since Jason left." Victor set the folder down. "Not bad for 5 days." Lena sat down across from him. "Truth is, they're trying, but we're still running with half the support we need. We can't stretch it much thinner." "I know," Victor said. "That's why I'm bringing in a floating relief team from 2 of our better performing locations. Temporary, just to give this crew a breather." Lena raised an eyebrow. "You're pulling from other stores," they volunteered. I explained what happened here. "They want to help." She looked down at her coffee. "I didn't think people at the top would care this much." "They don't." "I do." He stood up. "I'm meeting with the corporate training director tomorrow. We're rewriting the onboarding process. Every new employee will be trained in conflict management and customer empathy. And every manager will have to pass a people-first certification. That includes me." Lena blinked. "You're recertifying yourself. If I'm not willing to take the same training I expect of others, then I've already failed." She stood as well. "You're setting a new bar. It's going to shake some people." "Good." The next morning, Victor arrived before sunrise, walked the floor with Bryce, and reviewed the early shift's prep checklist. Reggie was already in the dish pit, his station cleaner than Victor had ever seen it. At exactly 7:15, a young woman in a delivery uniform stepped inside holding a clipboard. "Morning," she said to Victor. "I've got a delivery for a Miss Sasha. Inventory manager," Victor motioned to the side hallway. "That's her loading dock." "She'll be right out." He walked over as Sasha appeared from the back office, gloves half on, clipboard under her arm. "Delivery's on time," she said, scanning the manifest. "First time in a week." Victor watched her work. "You've got a good system." "I had to make one," she said. "Nobody else was tracking what we ran out of," he nodded. "I want you to standardize it, write it up, we'll make it part of training." She looked at him sideways. "Seriously, seriously." After the delivery was signed off, Victor stepped outside for a moment. The air was crisp, the sky still gray. His phone buzzed. A message from Pamela, payroll discrepancies confirmed and being corrected. Retroactive pay adjustments scheduled for Monday. He texted back a quick acknowledgement and returned inside. The dining room was beginning to fill. It was Saturday. Families, early risers, a few elderly couples who always showed up just past opening. At the counter, Illy greeted a customer and answered a question about gluten-free options without needing to check the menu. Victor watched from a distance. The kid had grown in 5 days. Near the window, the same security guard from earlier in the week sat with a fresh plate. This time she looked relaxed. 2 plates, in fact, one for her, one for another woman in uniform who joined her with a laugh. Victor didn't interrupt, he just watched. At the far end of the line, a young man in a baseball cap dropped a tray. It clattered loudly, mashed potatoes spilling across the tile. He froze, shoulders stiff. Before Victor could move, Bryce was already there, crouching down beside him. "Hey," Bryce said calmly. "You all right?" The kid nodded, embarrassed. "First day, sorry." "No big deal," Bryce said. "Happens to all of us. Grab the mop, I'll take the tray." Victor didn't interfere, he just smiled and walked back to the office. In the break room, he pinned a new sheet to the bulletin board. Employee recognition nominations. Below it, a list of names already filled the first row. Carla, Sasha, Reggie, Bryce, Illy, and next to each a space for handwritten notes from coworkers. He stepped back and looked at it. The board had been blank a week ago. Later that evening, after closing, the crew gathered near the drink station, wiping down surfaces and stacking chairs. Victor joined them, still in his button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. "I've got something to say," he began. The staff quieted. "This place wasn't broken because of bad luck. It was broken because I stopped paying attention. That ends now." No one moved. "I've seen every one of you step up in ways that weren't expected. You covered shifts, trained new hires, handled customers with care, and showed up even when no one said thank you." He paused. "So I'm saying it now, thank you." Someone clapped, then another. It grew slowly but genuine. Victor raised a hand. "Also, there's one more thing. Starting next month, this location will be part of our pilot program for profit sharing. That means when this store performs well, so do you." Eyes widened. Reggie leaned forward slightly. Sasha looked at him in disbelief. "It won't be a magic fix," Victor continued, "but it's a start. You've earned it." After the applause faded, Carla stepped forward, arms crossed over her apron. "You really going to keep coming back?" she asked, not accusing, just direct. Victor nodded. "Not every day, but often enough that no one forgets whose name is on the door." She gave a short nod and turned back to her station. As the staff finished cleaning and began to head out, Victor remained behind, locking up the office and walking a final loop through the dining area. The lights were dimmed now. Chairs stacked. The hum of the cooler in the back, the only sound. He paused by the booth where the mother and daughter had sat days earlier, the moment that had changed everything. He hadn't seen them again, but he'd made sure a free meal voucher with her name on it was left at the front counter, valid for as long as she wanted it. No questions asked. Victor stood there for a long moment, then turned off the last light and stepped out into the night. He wasn't just returning to the company he built, he was rebuilding it, from the floor up.